You are listening to Fintech Fridays, brought to you by the Office of Fintech, powered by the Economic Development Department, Government of Bermuda.
Happy Friday, family. My name is Marcus Weird. I work with the Premier's Office of Fintech in the Bermuda government. I'd like to welcome you to Fintech Fridays. Now, today, we have a special guest on the podcast, Mr. Kevin Richards. He is the Managing Director of Bermuda Asset Management, and we are here today to have a conversation about fintech in Bermuda. So, Kevin, thanks for being on the podcast.
Appreciate you having me.
And, what I'd like to start with is maybe just give you a chance to talk about yourself, to introduce yourself to the listeners, and maybe if you can give me a bit of background on your career and, how did you get to be in the position of managing a asset company or asset management firm here in Bermuda that, provides services to fintech companies?
Sure. Well, just thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor to be here and just talk a bit about my journey and what's happening in the fintech ecosystem and community in Bermuda. I'm Bermudian, born and bred, worked abroad and lived abroad for about 16 years. And I found myself back home in 2015 with the Bermuda Development Agency. And I was responsible for, at first it was international commerce, and then government change, so it became economic diversification. But I always had tech as a budget item in my portfolio.
Yeah.
I was fortunate where I had two tech consultants that knew what they were talking about. But I was absorbing what was happening and paying attention to the narrative, and especially with the government shift, we had a premier that actually was really progressive around fintech and I think had a deep understanding of what it could do to transform not only a jurisdiction but an economy.
Yeah.
So I had a front row seat to the whole, for the last 5 years of this journey that Bermuda's been in, but I think that the whole world has been in, and we've been a big player in this development for digital assets, blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, a lot of the stuff that we say fintech is. I've been fortunate to have this front row seat and be able to get a little bit more knowledgeable over the last 5 years on what I can bring to the table or how I can benefit from this evolution that's happening, and then how Bermuda can benefit. And I've got a bit of an insight or an opinion, I think, on how the country can leverage this and use it to its advantage. So it's been really, really great 5 years.
Solid, man. That's solid. Now, what I want to do is I want to make sure we give the audience a chance to get to know a little bit about you, because with these first few episodes of Fintech Fridays, we really want to drive up awareness that Bermudians can be involved.
Yep.
And ways that Bermudians have been involved. And I know that your journey is unique or quite unique given the positions you worked in. Would you mind maybe starting by giving a bit of an overview on your education? Because many people sometimes think that the journey starts with education, and my family have been drilling that into me forever, but
Sure.
I'd love to get a bit of that.
I think I was one of those guys that didn't know what he wanted to do. I had a lot of interests, and so undergrad I was a footballer, or soccer for any Americans.
No. You was a baller. Let's be real. Let's be real. You was a baller.
So I had a scholarship undergrad. So I did English and political science, a double major. At the time, I wasn't mature enough to do business classes at the time. I just wasn't interested. Tried to play professionally. I had some bad injuries, and so I was Bermudian, and I was in the UK. So I went into insurance.
Gotcha.
And so it had nothing to do with my degree. My degree proved that I could think.
Yep, that's exactly what it does.
Yeah.
I'd be telling your cousins.
And it was some stuff I was interested in. But after 5 years in insurance, I just didn't feel like it was for me. I kind of got an insight, if I'm passionate about something, I can be successful in it. And I think that's the most important thing for anyone listening, is that follow your passions.
Yeah.
So I went back and did an MBA at Notre Dame on entrepreneurship and sustainability.
Solid.
And so that's taken me on this journey of diversification and getting me into more of the finance world, where I went and worked with GE Capital, the bank in the UK.
Gotcha.
I did strategy for oil and gas in Canada, and then when I came home, the 5 years at the BDA just made me understand what made Bermuda tick. So from shipping, aircraft, agriculture space, energy, And then I'd say from 2017, midway 17 to Q4 until now, fintech has been at the driving force of what I've been working on, and then I think the underpinnings of my strategy moving into running Bermuda Asset Management.
Got you. That's a perfect segue into the next point I wanted to go through with you, was that I think it'd be good to give the viewers an overview of what Bermuda Asset Management. I'm gonna call it BAM.
Yeah, BAM.
BAM, just because it's easier. I'm gonna get tongue tied at some point, but could you give us an overview of what BAM does, and like what services do you provide in the fintech space? Because I think it's good.
And I mean, I think some history is needed. It was the first independent asset management company in Bermuda, started by my dad in 1987. And back then, he managed a pension fund, was a money manager, and kind of focused traditionally on your classic stocks and bonds.
Gotcha.
Mostly stocks, and pretty risk averse in his investment approach. And I'm coming from a completely different perspective of working with startups for the last couple of years, and being very comfortable at more of a angel VC early stage investment positioning. So, when I decided to leave the BDA, the development agency, and go my own path, I actually wasn't sure exactly what this would look like. But I'm fortunate enough to have a family that had this entity, and my dad became Minister of Finance in 2012, so we had wound the company down. So I had a shell of an organization that I've been able to make into my own. So now the company, we do non-executive directorships. I'm a certified at the Institute of Directors. We do advisory services, and we've had a portfolio of different fintech clients the last 2 years. And then we also, I'd say the last 12 months have been really focused around funds and asset management, and either attracting investment funds and bringing them to Bermuda, and working with some partners that I have on the ground here to help them launch very quickly, easily, and efficiently, or now setting up my first fund. So I'm an emerging manager, and I'm doing my first fund focused around climate, but we've also got some blockchain solutions that are embedded into some of our carbon credit solutions.
All right, so what I want to make sure we do is that we keep it simple. I love the detail you gave, and thank you for that, because we want to make sure people understand what the opportunities really are. And I think that you're a perfect example of a Bermudian that is going into the space, learned about it, and leverage that understanding and knowledge to find a path and purpose that works for you. And I respect that. I really do, brother. So what I want to do is I want to go into what inspired you to get into the space. We kind of touched on it when it came to your experience over at the BDA.
But even on jumping on that last point, I'd say I'm definitely not the smartest guy in the space, right? And in any space.
You never do want to be the smartest one in the room, though, man.
I love being around smart people. So I think as Bermudians, this opportunity. We've got people coming into our country every week. We just might not know about it.
Exactly.
So the thing I'm coming to the table with is this network through my last couple of years, and being able to absorb and pick up on certain insights from being in the room, and then understanding who we are and what we do as a jurisdiction. Like Bermuda plays a specific role in global finance. And that's why I joined the BDA when I came back in 2015, because I didn't understand it. And I understand it now.
Got you.
So I can leverage it, and I can go out on my own and say, look, I can provide these services. I can do this for your global structure. I can help guide you and navigate the Bermuda ecosystem in a way that most people can't. And that's going to add value to your company. That's going to save you money, save you time, save you frustration. And then we're going to add value on the business side, because we're legitimate, knowledgeable business people. So we can bring something to the table, whether it's on the tech side, we understand how tech works now, or on the regulatory side, we're a jurisdiction that is second to none in the world. So I think there's people in Bermuda that have elements of all of those bits, but haven't necessarily taken a step back and looked at, how is this industry similar to some of our other ones that we've been successful at, and how can we replicate those approaches and say, look, I can service you the same way my insurance colleagues service people, my funds people service people. We can do the same thing for digital assets.
Honestly, man, you just took me back to, if you can remember that drawing that we did when we were learning about fintech, about like, okay, if you unbundle commerce, right? Like the 4 squares of what it takes to actually do trade or commerce.
Right.
To exchange, you have to have something of value, you have to have people involved in it, you have to have terms and conditions and all the rules that apply and who does what, and then the framework above it all that actually makes sure people are held accountable and risk is managed, right? Like, so to me, what came to mind was that you found a lane to unbundle an element of traditional finance by, you know, like looking into what opportunities this new tech can provide, and by fitting the innovation that you see and that you come across in the fintech industry into the model that we have for insurance and reinsurance, which is a big part of why we have the Digital Asset Business Act, right? Like, legitimately, we're blessed, you know, we are really blessed to have a successful international business community that built a practice that's world renowned for managing risks. And nobody really wants to talk about how much risk there is in financial technologies, but there are risks, and we provide a service by giving people the capacity to trust what they do. So like I'm proud of seeing, you know, Bermudians getting into the industry and getting involved and finding their niche. And I wanna take a step back, because I feel like whenever we talk, we can go deep into any subject, and I think it's a beautiful thing having that type of conversation. But I want to know, and I want to give you the chance to speak to, what does fintech mean to you? And now we don't have to go, you know, into the weeds. But I'd love to hear you explain it like I'm a 5-year-old. And I know you got 2 little munchkins, so you understand breaking it down to simple principle,
I'll try. I mean, I think what it means to me is tied to your last question, which I didn't answer, which was what inspires me about it. And I think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for Bermuda to retool itself. I don't think it's a third leg for our economy. I think it's an opportunity to reconstruct the infrastructure of our financial ecosystem in a way that positions us for the future and allows us to not get left behind. You know, there's being back home as an adult since 2015. There's not many ways to reduce our cost of living. Like, this is what I'm passionate about. How do we improve our country? And then how do we use those examples or those lessons to then take them to other countries?
I see.
Right? That's what we should be doing as Bermudians, and our country is a leader and has done this in the past. So how can we reduce the cost of doing business? How can we make it easier to do business? All these technology solutions are solutions for us to be a better jurisdiction to attract business. And they're opportunities for us to reduce the cost of living in our country. It's an opportunity for us to get to net zero for climate. I think there's all of these solutions that are out there. The government has done an amazing job of saying, we're Innovation Island, we're the sandbox, come and test here. They just need Bermudians to work with. That's what the missing piece is, us, in my opinion.
And it's always been like that, because when you look back at it, what I just wrote down after what you were saying is that we're positioning Bermuda to export trust and new business practices. Now, that's a complicated way of saying it, but I think it's the best way I can boil down what it is that we do as a jurisdiction. And we've done this with insurance. We've done this with other areas of international business. What came to my mind is insurance-linked securities. It literally took Bermudians to recognize that there's not going to be enough capacity in the market to cover the risk that the insurance companies had. They didn't have enough money to cover the risk and to have the reserves so they could, you know, provide the service. They wanted to find a way to connect capital markets with the industry, and they created a new product that then, once you have the great idea, people have to trust it. And so how do you develop trust in something? You learn to play by the same rules as others. It's the same thing as when you're a kid. You play house with somebody, and you know, your munchkins probably learn how to play games over time. You actively engage with people that you're playing with. You don't show up to a baseball field with a football. You see nobody. You get me though, right? It's like that's what we do as a jurisdiction that's empowering. And we never got around to what is fintech to you, because this happens every time.
Fintech to me is just another iteration, evolution of what's been happening my whole life.
Gotcha.
Right? You know, this is a new technology that's going to enable us to get more efficiency and do business cheaper, faster, and with more transparency, and less fraud and less risk involved. I mean,
I see it.
Right?
Building trust, right?
Yeah, it's just another layer. I think there's a window that a country like Bermuda's relevancy wanes, and you don't need to innovate in a jurisdiction like ours anymore. Mm-hmm. And if we don't take advantage of that window, which we're in, we're going to be irrelevant because we're a nothing market. We're a 60,000 person jurisdiction. You're not going to make a ton of money by operating here, but you can leverage the legitimacy of the country and the regulator and the open government to then validate your products, get licensed, and then go scale into big jurisdictions in a legitimate way where you're not going to be looked on as a potentially nefarious actor. Mm-hmm. That's the benefit.
Exactly.
And if we don't take advantage of that now, they're going to go somewhere else, do it, figure out the tech, and then they won't need Bermuda. And then it'd be just like Venmo and these other innovations that never came to Bermuda. And then we gotta buy iPhones on a gift card because I'm not in the drop down list. It's Bermuda. It's crazy.
Exactly. And see, that's it. It's like there's multiple sides to this, and I'm trying not to laugh because of the recording, because that is such a scary thing to me, because I went to a school with more students and staff, students, faculty, staff than Bermuda has population. Right. That's terrifying to think that we're so small that we really are not a large enough market for companies that are already established and have the trust mechanism necessary for them to carry out the business. There's no benefit to them setting up here aside from prestige and pink beaches and beautiful people and good food and great music and all the extras that you don't really talk about unless you're a tourist here.
No, but I'd say the other thing is that in the 80s you hear like the older generation talk about how we had so many investment funds and all this stuff, and then over to Cayman because we were so successful in insurance. We've got this opportunity because we were ahead of the other offshore jurisdictions to get the investment funds industry coming back to Bermuda around digital asset funds. We're licensing them. We've got partners and experts that can do it fast and efficiently. So there's this opportunity to also add business to Bermuda, and one thing we're lacking here is the capital to actually invest in local startups for international businesses that will come here. Like, we're missing pieces of the puzzle to make Bermuda scale up to one more level. And I think that's what I am trying to accomplish now that I'm on my own, is that I saw these things, I had a front row seat, and for whatever reason we weren't able to deliver one at all. And that's just reality.
The adult term for that is conflicting priorities.
I'm trying to be politically correct.
No, but that's all we gotta say is that there's always conflicting priorities in any organization.
When then COVID happens, a global pandemic happens, and what are you gonna do?
You're right, brother. You're right. I feel like there's so many points that you hit on that we're gonna have to have another episode because I like this conversation. But I want to touch on real quick, or move on to the next area that I was hoping to discuss with you, which is basically how does fintech impact and how is it advancing the services that you provide, right? With BAM, because I'd like to have you describe, if you could, what it's like to work with fintech companies here in Bermuda, like as a Bermudian that saw an opportunity and started as or expanded upon a business to provide services for this sector. Tongue-tied. What is it like?
The honest answer is it's varied. So I love my clients. But I'd say over 2 years, we've had some challenging clients as well. And as Bermudians, we're not used to startups. So I think that challenge of, a lot of startups fail. There's a volatile market. So if the companies you're working with have crypto assets back in their business, that could be a big risk. So in these big swings that are happening, I've lost clients. I've had to deal with things where there's big Bermuda insurance companies and law firms that can offer more money and I've lost staff. So it's been great. I got to say, because I did my entrepreneurship MBA 10 years ago. So I'm going through the realities of an entrepreneur, and even the tough days, is you smile a little bit because at least it's real and you're doing it on your own terms.
Yeah.
But I think the relationships I have with my clients, with the fintech clients, are so deep. These are lifelong friendships that I've made because we've been going through this grind together. And I met them as a government representative. So during COVID, a lot of these guys were like, Kevin, I can't get to Bermuda. I need someone I can trust. Can you represent me? And so there's this faith, this trust within myself and some of my clients. And then we've traveled, recently around the world to try to raise some capital or get them to expand in other jurisdictions. So I think there's this opportunity for scaling globally as well because it's technology.
Yep.
That you can do it with a lean team, and you can actually, as a local Bermudian, provide like significant value globally for companies because borders don't really matter anymore.
I got you, man. Thank you for that. What I want to do is take a couple minutes to speak to some of the advances in fintech and really go over how it impacts, advisory services. So, we launched the Digital Asset Business Act as a jurisdiction back in 2018, right? Over the past 4 years, we've had multiple, updates in our regulation that have, had more companies show up to Bermuda to see, how can they get their innovative practices respected, regulated, trusted. And the technology that they're introducing to finance is brilliant, like actually quite brilliant. So I want to understand, if you wouldn't mind just taking a couple minutes to, talk about how fintech is changing the business that you carry out, you know what I mean? Like, and how it, after that, if you could talk about how it's changing you, because I know that it's changed me.
Yeah.
It definitely has.
I think it's the jury's still out on how much it's affecting how I do business because I haven't been successful yet.
Oh, come on.
I think, no, because some of the solutions.
Modesty.
Some of the solutions that we have are not rolled out yet.
Got you.
And so we're waiting. But the benefit of Bermuda is, the BMA are in the same building as me. And I run into them sometimes getting in the elevator. I'm like, what's going on with that regulation? So I know things are happening, and they're working on the next step. But one of my prized clients is doing compliance as a service and digital identity. So one of the pillars I want to solve is how do we get digital identity adoption on the ground in Bermuda?
What do you mean when you say digital identity? Because this is an opportunity to expand on something that not many Bermudians get a chance to really listen into.
Sure. I think if anybody in Bermuda will have had to get like passport validation or utility bill for something.
Yeah.
Or, if I'm setting up a new business in Bermuda, I come from the BDA perspective. I have to do the same thing with about 5 different actors in Bermuda. The regulator, the law firm, the bank, the CSP, and it's unnecessary because we have the technology where you can do it once, and then people can trust that Kevin Richards is Kevin Richards, and the checks that this licensed entity for compliance did on me has been validated. And
I get you.
As long as we can protect that data, and whether, this one might get technical, whether we shard the data or we have it in multiple different data centers around the world, or whatever that looks like.
All right.
We protect it.
I hear you.
Then it it won't be a big honeypot for somebody to go steal. So I think that's the risk. But in terms of, I'm a solution oriented person. If we have this Kevin Richards identity stored somewhere safe that the law firm can then access, when I want to go open up my bank account in Bermuda, they go directly and access. I don't have to fill out the paperwork.
Yeah.
I save 2 weeks. The bank doesn't have to spend a cost. They could have their compliance people doing other, value-added work.
Yeah.
Like the efficiencies across the entire value chain of a country, across all the players, is significant.
See, now you went big, and I want to drill in a little bit because I feel like this is something we could speak to simply, and in a way people can understand if we use the right tools when we communicate it. So one tool that I use, I usually pull out my wallet every
Right.
time I talk about digital identity, right? Because look, I've got, excuse the ruffling and snuffling, so wallet. Got a debit card here that has credentials and information on it that's tied to my finances. You also have my driver's license. This is a means by which I can actually prove who I am, right? This is all within a physical wallet. I also have currency in there, not a lot, but it's enough. You see it? So these are tools that we carry around with us on a regular basis. And I think that what you're speaking to when it comes to digital identity being like, what does it look like? It looks just like
Yes.
real world identity, just in a more efficient format.
Yeah.
So instead of you having to go and get a printout of your Belco bill in order to set up an account because they need to have proof of what your address is,
You just
if you s-
authorize Belco to send it to the
you
person who's
see
checking.
it. You see it. So it's like you can automate a lot of the difficult processes that make it inconvenient to do things in the digital world, and that has knock-on effects, right? So do you think that did I miss anything in trying to break down digital
I
ID
think
from
you know
there?
that's exactly it, and I think the benefits are maybe undervalued by the general person.
Oh yeah, but think about what's happened in the past, bro. I'm sorry, I'm getting real comfortable. In the past, what we had was situations. Let's look at credit cards. Right? When credit cards that didn't exist at some point, and now you had a means of making payment that was more efficient than using checks and such, right?
Right. Well, that's the second big thing that we need to solve here.
What's that?
The adoption of stable coin currencies at a retail level, because we're a listed in terms of risk jurisdiction, but the credit cards charge us like we're a developing nation in Latin America.
Yep.
Because we have no power on a global standing. So we're getting penalized from being a small country, despite the fact that we are one of the most sophisticated business centers in the world. We're paying rates that says that we have a government that can't be trusted and a financial system that can't be trusted.
And that's not the
true.
case because CFATF looks at us highly. I mean, gotta be top 6.
So I think based on our history and the way the BMA uses the Bermuda dollar and ties that to the US dollar, I think the government has said in 2019 that we're willing to accept licensed stablecoin payments for tax.
Yeah.
So one of my big initiatives is that we need to have stablecoin adoption at a retail level. And so I think those things are also happening in the background.
Yeah.
Where these companies are working on getting licensed, they're building the tech. I have multiple clients that are doing this in different industries.
Yeah.
And so I can't wait for the day where we've got stablecoin adoption at a retail level where people can be paid in dollars, but they're not paying 3%. Where I can get my identity validated once and it's accepted across the country.
I hear you.
Those are like foundational truths that this new technology can bring to how we live.
That we don't have access to now, and that we risk. The biggest risk for, I think, us young Bermudians is that we miss out on the curve of innovation.
Yes.
Right? So look at when I first joined on board, and I'll keep this one brief. I like telling stories, as you know. I had a close friend who was living abroad who is quite successful, and I asked him, I'm trying to get my stuff together and get my finances in order, and my brethren actually told me how he was approaching his investment portfolio, and I couldn't access that same company that he was accessing for easy investment tool, as a simple investment tool, because you had to have a U.S. Social Security number in order to access it. And me, I didn't have, I don't, I'm not an American citizen, I'm a Bermudian, so that's a danger that we don't always put our eyes on, but we should, because there's opportunities for this space to really improve what we do here. And when you talk about the stablecoin situation, we already have a Bermuda dollar, which in effect is like a physical stablecoin. And that is a brilliant thing to look at. Now, for those who are listening, stablecoin is basically when you have a digital representation of value that in the case that we're speaking to, it is pegged to a fiat currency, so it's pegged to a U.S. dollar,
Right.
like the British pound,
Right.
the euro. In this case, we're looking to build our use cases for the Bermuda dollar to be represented in a digital format.
Right.
So those types of innovations, I agree with you. It's massive, but we sometimes look for we expect change to take place quickly when really it has to take place
It's gotta take time,
incrementally,
yeah.
piece by piece. Cell phones didn't go from the razor back or the, you know what I mean? Like the Nokia brick to what I got in my pocket
Yeah,
today.
to the supercomputer.
You see it? This is about 20 years of breaking cell phones I've had under my belt for them to get this far. What will digital assets look like and digital identity look like in 20 years? In 15 years, and how do we set ourselves up as a jurisdiction for that?
I know we're running out of time here, so
Just running short.
Okay,
You got a little bit
I
of
would
time.
say this: when I think about Bermuda in the Bermuda context, the tourism story, where Bermuda was the go-to place for tourism, 60s, 70s, 80s, and then the Caribbean became a more attractive place to go, not because they had better beaches, but because they were cheaper.
Yep.
And easier to operate with.
Yep.
And I see the same thing potentially happening here. Is we're first. We got the first digital asset regulation. We're the first to the post. We got this great ecosystem. But if we don't make it easy to do business here, and
We're gonna lose the opportunity.
And if we're out there selling this innovation island concept, and then they come here and they can't pay for stuff, even with a credit card, people only take cash. It just doesn't drive up, and I think we're going to lose business, and I think we already have to an extent. But I think for the long term, that's the threat, is that if we don't adopt the things that we've been talking about for 3-5 years, and we don't continue to accelerate at that pace, our competitors will, and they've been watching us.
When we look at other jurisdictions that have taken on digital asset regulation after we did, right? So Bahamas is an example, Cayman is an example with VASP. And then you look at the larger jurisdictions, so the US, EU, those regions, they progress so much slower than us, so we need to use that, we need to leverage that pace of understanding what the industry needs, setting up the framework so that it can, build trust in new mechanisms and models, and then regulating it in a way that we know is successful and that we know it's not just successful, but it's sound thinking. You know what I mean? Like, it's actually wise to make sure that the people you need to protect at the end of the day are the customers. The people who are using the service, any risk that is presented to them, you need to make sure you manage it. That's a practice that is principled, right?
Yeah.
So if we need to continue to leverage and build. I like a lot what you're saying.
Yeah, for me, it's all about adoption at this stage, and
Gotcha.
we have to understand who we are. Like, I think with the mistakes we made in 2018 were we didn't understand the mousetrap we built.
Yep.
The BMA built this amazing, Formula One car regulation, and we're out there saying, hey, you got a horse and carriage? Why don't you come drive it on our roads?
And this is the thing that got to me, is like we also didn't, as we've developed and over time, we've started taking steps, like the test license, for instance. I think that's an important thing to point out to Bermudians as well, is that the Digital Asset Business Act allows for people to get licensed to conduct digital asset business. Keep it simple, right? Now, we built our model based off of the reinsurance and insurance model of managing risks associated with business activities. What we didn't do off the bat, so 2018 to 2020-ish, 2021, is have an avenue for entrepreneurs and startups, right? Because the insurance industry, you had to have X hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to just be involved in the game. You needed $1 million worth of reserves in order to meet the requirements of licensing. But if you're a startup dabble company, it's not realistic. When I first came on board, it would have cost me $200,000 plus just to get licensed. And like license
just limits like the pipeline we can get.
You see it, and so we have taken steps to improve, introducing the test license. So all Bermudians should understand that if if you come and set up a business, or if you have an idea when it comes to fintech, you can go to the Bermuda Monetary Authority and actively apply for a test license, which is a lower bar for the financial requirements for the like, mind you, they'll allow you to operate in like a limited scale and scope, so you could test out your idea with, and then learn how to manage the risks under the guidance of the authority.
Right.
That's something that we had to build out, because it wasn't that never took place in insurance. You know, like anybody doing innovative insurance products was probably over at oh my goodness, I always say Ace and Excel. It's AXA and Chubb.
But now there's an InsurTech sandbox too. So I think
exactly
everybody's sort of on that same footing of, okay, every industry understands how Bermuda can make itself an attractive innovation sector.
Yeah.
And I see the infrastructure coming with, you know, the InnoFund Innovation Incubator launching. Ignite has done really well. You know, we have more lawyers that are knowledgeable in the space now. I just think, you know, as you said earlier, it takes a lot longer than people appreciate, and we're so used to being successful that we just were like, well, you should be just like the insurance industry.
Oh yeah, just like, why don't you have the capital to do this? I mean, you want to start an effective business, you need to show us you know your risks. The industry has been around for 12, 13 years.
But I would say until I was on the other side of the table and actually working in these companies and for these companies, I didn't quite get it, right? Like in terms of the amount of work that needs to be done for them to actually get to where we're going, right? We're still pretty early in the whole development of the industry, and so I think, you know, Bermudians just have to get that deep understanding of, you know, where are we in the cycle of this innovation cycle for fintech?
Yeah.
And which companies are there, like Circle? Yeah. And which ones should we be really excited about? Like, I've got a couple of them, right? But, you know, what we're potentially doing with MAPay on healthcare payments is crazy. Yeah. You know, so I think there's things that are in Bermuda already being built and developed for Bermudians. But, like, you know, it's taken a couple years, right? And I think we just don't really know what's happening because, you know, it's not in the paper.
Yo, man, all right, so now we are getting close to the last 5 minutes. I see Richard over here just looking at me like, yo, bro, let's get it. I have one last question, and this is more of a fun question, right? So I don't like doing this for myself because I know that 20-year-old Marcus made enough mistakes to write books. But what I like to ask brothers and sisters that come onto the podcast is if you could have a conversation with your younger self, let's say 20 years old, because at that point, I know that you took time to learn what your purpose was, and I went through a similar journey, but at 20, you can start acting on real advice, yeah? I want to know what advice you would give to your younger self. Are there any things that you would tell your younger self to avoid at all costs? And how would you help young Kevin to prepare for the journey to Corn Kevin? You know what I mean? Because I think that those points are really valuable, and I've been privileged to have access to people who talk to me honestly about important things in life. Not everybody gets that, so we hope that this podcast can serve as a channel for that. And I think that the advice you'd give to yourself is the advice that you should speak to others. Marcus Aurelius, meditation style.
I mean, my advice would be to listen to your instincts and that whole gut sense, and really try to be introspective about what you like. Okay. Looking back on myself, if I'm not really interested in something, I'm not good.
Yeah, I know that for you.
And it doesn't matter how technical the topic. If I like it, I can get over that.
You will go all the way into the weeds. Yeah. And I see that.
But if I don't, then and if I'm doing it because of expectations, or this is what I think I should be doing because I'm from Bermuda, I should go into insurance, or my parents, I should do this, I could see, looking back on myself, I think I definitely did things that I just thought, well, I guess I'm supposed to do this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I went back to the BDA where I saw that there was all these other industries in my country that I could have been working in that were real cool.
Yeah.
That were interesting. And I'm like, oh man, I would have loved to, if I knew that when I was in high school, I would have been way more focused, right? Because we have an aircraft registry that was the 10th largest in the world. There's all these things that I just didn't know existed in Bermuda that I think we don't tell each other about, and it's at the detriment to young Bermudians.
Yeah.
And as a Bermudian boy that played football, I think in particular it's a detriment to young Bermudian boys.
Yeah.
Because we're distracted. It's harder for us to focus, and at a young age, girls normally do a lot better in school, and the guys are the ones that are getting in trouble. And I sort of, I went away.
Gotcha.
So I got in less trouble, quote unquote, in Bermuda, but I was still doing nonsense.
Oh no, everybody goes through that phase.
So I think that would have been a big thing, just kind of like really trusting yourself as a younger person, and then leaning into what you like and are good at.
Yeah.
I think you would be much more happy and successful in a career if you're able to do that and have the confidence to do that.
Bless your whole heart for that, brother. Two things that you said that stood out to me was basically the thought that purpose is an instinct, and if I could summarize it, just to capture a bit of the wisdom you shared, if you apply yourself to what you feel is purposeful, and when you are interested in something, you allow yourself the freedom to be intense.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to. I've been challenged throughout my life to openly apply myself with the intensity that comes from real passion, because you get taught to temper that, right? Time and trauma temper us, and trauma is a big factor when it comes to shaping expectations and reality. I'm grateful you shared that, and I really hope that to the listeners that take the time to tune in to Fintech Fridays this week, that you grab onto that and you're able to leverage it, because that's a jam, brother.
Thank you.
I'm
I
grateful.
appreciate the time, and really thankful for the opportunity to talk to you today.
Hey man, it's been a blessing. We're gonna have to have you back on so we can have some
Anytime.
more conversations, because I don't want to talk football right now. My team isn't doing too well, but if we could have a conversation about Arsenal and the Blanks, I would love to do that. Say, oh my gosh, it would be lovely. It's been a blessing, brother.
For sure.
For those of you who took the time to tune in, once again, thank you for listening in on Fintech Fridays, and I hope that you stay blessed.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right.